Hey folks, this is Riker with a gaming news wrap-up video where we discuss the happenings of the week. This week's topics include the next installment in the Blizzard lawsuit saga, the Diablo 2 Resurrected devs looking into possible post-launch updates, a long-running D2 bug being fixed in D2R, and more. As always, discussion timestamps can be found in the description below. But right before you skip ahead, just a quick reminder to ring that sub notification bell to be alerted to new Saturday episodes and stay up to date with gaming news highlights. Now, before I move on, just a quick word from this video's sponsor, Keeps, which is all about keeping your hair. About 2/3 of men will experience some form of male pattern baldness by the time they reach 35. Some men lean into the shaved head look, but some enjoy having and styling hair and want to know if they have any options. Now, there's no magic cure for baldness, but there are common preventative steps to stop it from progressing and keep the hair you have, including FDA-approved medications. But the key is to start before it's all gone and to be consistent. Keeps is a subscription service that focuses on making it easier and more affordable for men to treat their male pattern baldness, all from the comfort of their home. With Keeps, you get automated shipping and delivery to your home every 3 months, and they offer generic brand versions of the FDA-approved medications, which makes it more affordable. They also offer online doctor consultations with a board-certified physician who can review your information and recommend the right treatment plan for you. So, if you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss, go to keeps.com/Riker or click the link in the description to receive 50% off your first order. That's keeps.com/RHYKKER. In our first story, Darkest Dungeon 2 is coming to early access on October 26th on the Epic Games Store. I really enjoyed Darkest Dungeon, and I'm looking forward to Darkest Dungeon 2, but I know a lot of people will be waiting for this one to hit Steam. And I want to ask you folks, how often does a game store affect your purchasing decisions? Do you wait for a game to release on Steam before buying it, or do you not care how you get the game? Sound off in the comments. Next, I'd like to quickly share this trailer for upcoming game V Rising that was brought to my attention via our subreddit. It's a survival game that combines ARPG gameplay with crafting, base building, and oh, you're a vampire, so you have to hide from the sun and feed on peasants from nearby villages. It's a nice twist, and I look forward to learning more about this one. In other news, Valheim finally got its long-awaited Hearth and Home update, which includes some great quality of life features, but is ultimately a lot lighter on content than I had hoped. It seems like a great update, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's quite enough to bring me back to the game. For those of you who are playing the update, is Hearth and Home worth coming back for, or should we wait for a more substantial content update? In other quick news, the Nintendo Switch has rolled out a software update that adds Bluetooth connectivity as a feature. Yeah, a software update that enables Bluetooth audio, which basically tells us that this whole time our Nintendo Switches had the hardware to handle Bluetooth, so why didn't they? I heard some talk that Bluetooth can be quite finicky, and maybe it took them this long to develop and test the proper software that allows for reliable Bluetooth connectivity that met their quality standards, but it just seems kind of funny to me that a software update can enable a piece of dormant hardware. On to our big story. Activision Blizzard is once again in the headlines, and shockingly, it's not because they're winning 2021's Company of the Year award. No, it's because Activision Blizzard is being accused of violating labor laws by trying to stop its employees from talking about how the company is violating labor laws. I think the proper legal term is the snitches get stitches policy. The Communications Workers of America, or CWA, has filed an unfair labor practice charge against Activision Blizzard on behalf of Activision Blizzard's employees as part of an initiative to support workers' organizing efforts in the technology and game industries. The CWA is the largest communications and media labor union in the US, representing about 700,000 members. And it's been around for over 70 years. The charges the CWA are bringing against Activision Blizzard are for worker intimidation and union busting. The filing states that within the last 6 months, Blizzard has, quote, repeatedly engaged in unlawful conduct by threatening employees that they cannot talk about or communicate about wages, hours, and working conditions, as well as threatened or disciplined employees and engaged in surveillance and interrogation about protected concerted activity. They also accused Blizzard of, quote, maintaining an overly broad social media policy and having enforced that policy against employees who have engaged in protected concerted activity. The protected concerted activity may refer to either discussing wages or efforts to self-organize in proto-unionization efforts, as some employees were using their social media platforms to organize with one another and share their demands. The CWA states, quote, instead of responding to these demands, Activision Blizzard management is using coercive tactics to attempt to prevent its employees from exercising their rights to stand together and demand a more equitable, sustainable, and diverse workplace. It is their right as workers to organize for a work environment free from abuse, discrimination, and sexual harassment, and this right is protected by federal labor law. According to Vice, one current Activision Blizzard employee, speaking to them under anonymity out of fear of repercussion, was saying how some employees have recently been told that their performance was not up to par, and this employee suspects this has nothing to do with their actual performance. The employee said, quote, we think since they're being so outspoken, leadership is trying to get rid of them. Another employee said, quote, I've noticed some people have gone completely silent. And another said, quote, we've seen retaliation already, so I'm scared. Meanwhile, Activision Blizzard has hired a new head of HR, Chief People Officer Julie Hodges, who was formerly the Senior Vice President of Corporate HR and Compensation, Benefits, and Talent Acquisition at the Walt Disney Company. She's a 32-year veteran of Disney and was in the Senior VP role since 2009. Hodges is replacing Claudine Naughton, who was Chief People Officer since 2019 at Activision Blizzard, but a rep told Axios Gaming that her departure is unrelated to the ongoing lawsuit, which is a little difficult to believe. Sure, maybe she's not being fired or ousted, but even if she decided to leave on her own, to say that the lawsuit didn't somehow play into her decision seems a little unlikely. Outside of personnel changes, Blizzard has been hard at work addressing the lawsuit by altering or replacing obscure paintings in WoW that showed a bit too much skin. This change is pretty self-explanatory, and I'd even say the new version is an upgrade due to the higher resolution and, frankly, higher quality artwork. But what I don't understand is the choice to swap out melons for lemons in this one. Of course, people are giving Blizzard crap for these changes, but I don't believe this is Blizzard trying to show that it's making changes in light of the lawsuit. Like, oh look, we're doing all these positive changes. I think it's really just Blizzard scrambling to remove any trace of anything that can be used as further ammunition to spur future negative headlines like Blizzard objectifies women, look at these images that are still in the game. Onto Diablo news. We got this week the reveal of the Diablo 2 Resurrected cinematic trailer, and it left me speechless. We saw new cinematic footage, including clips from the confrontation between Baal and Tyrael, Diablo's grisly transformation, and Mephisto summoning the soul portal to hell. Seeing those old cinematics remade in modern graphics really highlights how amazing they were. How the narrative, the atmosphere, the cinematography, the voice acting, everything was just so on point and has held up so well with time. It's not too uncommon these days to see really visually impressive cinematics from different companies, but it's kind of just, oh yeah, that's cool. Cool fight scene, you know, cool monster design. But Blizzard's old school cinematics weren't just cool fight scenes and snappy one-liners. They stayed with you because they succeeded in so many different disciplines of audiovisual storytelling. Honestly, the remade cinematics are one of the things I'm most looking forward to experiencing in D2R. However, there's one thing about the trailer that did not go unnoticed by fans. Tyrael's delivery of this line seemed off. Let's see if you hear it.
You have just ensured the doom of this world.
Compare that to the original.
Fool! You have just ensured the doom of this world.
You can tell this is an entirely different recording. There's a faster pace and greater sense of urgency in the original cinematic compared to the trailer. Well, Diablo executive producer Rod Ferguson addressed this on Twitter saying, quote, "We actually got the original actor in to deliver the lines slightly differently for the trailer to match the pace. The lines are unchanged in the game." It blows my mind that they went to the trouble of recording lines just for a trailer. And I do have to agree that The original delivery may have been too rushed for the trailer's pace. In other D2R news, there's still hope for those who want some changes to the base D2 experience. In an interview with Game Rant, Blizzard expressed that while the focus is on getting the initial launch perfect, there is a possibility for post-launch changes. Game Rant asked, quote, "With Diablo 2 Resurrected, was there ever any consideration of keeping the core game mechanics intact, but still finding ways to maybe add new enemies or new items? Things that just add more without changing the core experience?" Blizzard replied, quote, "Oh yeah, we definitely geeked out about those kind of things. Lots of things that wouldn't fundamentally change anything, but could just be plugged in. We wanted to build a strong foundation before we started hitting the 3rd and 4th floors. We definitely have lots of ideas, but right now we're making sure we get the core game right. We've unlocked all the ladder-specific content and could do that in single player and non-ladder. We'll have to see what happens once the game goes live in terms of what we do, in terms of balancing, new items, etc. I know the community is divided on this stuff. There are purists that are firmly opposed to any kinds of changes. There are those who say they will not continue playing if there are no changes at all, and Blizzard is definitely feeling out the community here to determine whether or not it's worth putting out any updates, and if so, what kind of updates to put out. So do definitely continue to voice your opinion. I personally think that having a classic server with no changes, and then an evolving server that will see continued small-scale balance changes and content updates would probably be what makes the greatest number of people happy. Other good news for D2R is the confirmation that a long-running D2 bug will be fixed. The Trap Assassin bug, or the Trapsin bug, that in short, without getting into the details, it caused fewer boss packs to spawn for Trapsins, leading to fewer item drops from those valuable boss packs. Well, PezRadar confirmed on Twitter that the Trapsin bug will be fixed in a Day 1 patch. PezRadar also shared some insight on another long-running bug and Blizzard's plans to address it or not address it. The next hit always misses bug. In short, this bug made it so that your next attack, after getting an attack interrupted, say by being stunned or by dodging or blocking, your next hit would always miss. Your next attack would always miss. Whether it was an attack or a spell, it just would never connect. Previously, Rod Ferguson had stated that they weren't going to fix this bug in order to preserve the quirks of D2, but that they would continue to monitor community feedback to see if they should in fact address it. Well, now on Reddit, PezRadar left a lengthy comment discussing things in detail. Quote, "So, the NHAM bug is an interesting one. I know Rod chimed in briefly, but I have some further details on how and why it works in a specific way. Depending on how you look at it, we didn't touch it, but in another way, we fixed it. First, let me explain what D2 Legacy does, and what you see as a player, and why it is perceived as a bug. There are two places where logic is happening when you play D2. One is on the client, that is your computer, and the other is on the server, that's our computers here. When you play with other players, they're doing things on their client and updating the server as well. The server sorts it all out and sends information back to everyone. When the information on one of them is different than the other, we call that a desync. A good example of this is when you are standing in one spot and the server thinks you're in another. This causes the rubber banding when you snap back to a spot where both locations are the same. This is why you tend to see rubber banding more if you have a poor connection versus a strong one. As we modernized D2L for D2R, we did a lot of work to keep our desyncs to a minimum. One other example of a desync is when a player that is doing something, for instance Teleport or Frost Nova, takes a hit. On the client, the player starts playing the animation. Attacks and other abilities don't actually occur on the first frame of animation. They will occur at a later point in time. With the teleport, you'll start to see the lightning form, but the actual translocation of your character doesn't occur till later in the animation cycle. If you were to get hit while you were playing that animation, you would get knocked out of the ability, and it would be cancelled. In D2L, it was common for you to see the animation continue for much longer than it should have. This then caused it to look like your next ability missed, because what the client saw and what the server saw were two different things. The client would then reject any successful abilities because it knew you were still in the get hit state. However, as a player, the client had become desynced and let the animation continue. This would then make it look like your teleport went off or your Frost Nova fired off, but in reality, nothing happened. This NHAM bug people are seeing is slightly tied to the example above, as your next attack or skill after a hit reaction just wouldn't work. The reason that occurred in D2L is that you would act on your client, but the server was still in hit recovery and rejected or ignored the command. D2R has made significant improvements so that the player now sees what the client has been doing all these years much more accurately. So when you take a hit on the client and are still taking a hit on the server, you'll see the same thing in both places. The logic is still the same as it always has been, but we now have fixed how it is being shown on the client. I think feedback post-launch will be important to see and hear from everyone regarding this. As Rod mentioned, we will continue monitoring feedback post-launch, but we think getting it in front of more people and for more time will help build a better idea of how it feels with the community. Now, on one hand, based on my understanding of the bug, I don't think this fixes it. However, even if it doesn't fix the bug, it's still great news that the netcode is being improved to reduce desync issues in general. Lastly, I wanted to highlight that Carbot released a teaser of Diablo 2 Act 5, and it hilariously pokes fun at how Blizzard remastered the faces of the Diablo 2 heroes. Do check that out, it's not even a minute long. And that's gonna wrap up this week's video. But do be sure to have checked out last week's video, in which we discuss why Blizzard is dropping an important multiplayer feature in D2R. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on YouTube or Patreon, and unlocking behind-the-scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. Check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Riker's Raiders for more gaming content.